Alright, yes, I will be recording this. This will all be posted onto YouTube. This will also, I will post on the dev forum, like a full-on tutorial, so that this can live on off of Twitch. I think I have it. You just have to open it and you should see this. Alright. I think we are all ready to go. Is anyone stuck? I hope not. I don't like how on Twitch I can't pin messages. So I had to make a little fancy card. I just ate a big McDonald's meal. That sounds good. Alright. Alright, let's begin. So I'm just going to give you all a, just a, run through what's in this, game so that you all are familiar, so that when we code it, we're not like, oh. So this is the map. I made most of the things that you're seeing, except the pumpkins and the cauldron. I just found that on the catalog and used it, made sure there was no scripts in it either. But this is the map. This is what we'll be working with. As you can see right here, this is a house. So all houses are numbered so that we can identify which house is which, because if they're all named house, it'll be a lot harder to be like, oh, we are at this specific house. So identifying which house is which is best. In each house, because of the groupings I did, we'll have a house within the house model. And then inside of the house, we have these beautiful parts. So inside each house, they'll have a doorbell. We will use this so that we could make it so that the door rings, so it's not just, ring and move on. So we'll have it so that there's a sound effect that goes with it, and also help us create that little prompt that you would see when you walk up to a doorbell, so that you can actually ring the doorbell. And then we have the front door. This is what we'll be using to actually move the door. We'll be doing some positioning with it because I couldn't really get it to actually rotate because of the hinges and all the axle related stuff, so I couldn't really do that, and I didn't want to make it a little more confusing for people. And then we have the windows. Windows are going to help identify, when you go up to the house, you just ring the doorbell, lights are open, means someone's going to be coming out soon. And then finally, we have this invisible door. So what had happened was players were able to walk through the door, and when the door closes, they're kind of stuck. So they couldn't really leave unless they ring the doorbell again, and they had a short amount of time to escape. So I added this invisible door. It'll make it so that the NPC player is able to walk through it and give the player the candy, while the player himself can't actually go inside. So they're not gonna get stuck in. Darth Gaming, on the bottom left of the stream, you'll see a little link that says the trick or treat files, the game files. Just go there and download it. We haven't started any coding. We're just going through just what's in this so that we all know what we're going to be using to code with each object. Next we have, let me pull this up. We have different folders in the replicated storage. So we have assets. So for the assets, if you notice, when you go up to a house, you might get candy or you might get tricked. If you get candy, you will get this little particle effect that comes outward, so that it makes it so that the player knows oh, I just collected candy. And then you'll also see this little trick explosion particle. I literally just looked up an emoji of a cloud and put it as that, and that will help identify that the player is getting tricked. Ignore this pumpkin explosion particle. That was for something I wanted to do but didn't have enough time for. Next, inside the assets folder, we have this little tricked folder where it's going to help identify okay, they got the clothing trick, where their trick is going to mess with their clothing. So what we do is we go inside and we have this specific shirt and pants that we're going to change the player with, so that it makes it so that that trick is going to actually change their clothes. We need to identify those clothes. What you can also do is just identify like in the code like, oh, this is the ID. But to make it simple for a lot of people, I just created like the instance. Next, we have the actual trick or treat like person that comes out of the door. So that's the NPC. We made it so that the player is going to go up to the house, door rings, NPC walks out. That's the NPC model. Next, we have costumes. So the NPCs are going to choose from a random costume in this folder. Currently, we only have 4, but you can add in more. We'll make it so that you can just simply by creating a folder and adding in the stuff inside of it. And what it's going to do is it's going to loop through inside the costume folder. So, for instance, in the clown, we have like the shirt, the pants, the actual hat, and their face. We want to make sure that especially the face is named this way because it will help identify this is the face ID so that we can add it into the NPC's face. And next we have the events. Hello, sorry, I joined late. What are we doing? So, person, at the bottom left corner of my screen, you will see this little card that has game files link. Go there, and you'll have the game files. We haven't done any coding. We're just going through and identifying like what, like each thing we have, so that you guys know what we're going to be coding with. The stream is currently have the stream set for 2 hours. I hope it doesn't take over 2 hours. It might go under depending on how fast we go. Next, under the scripts, don't touch this. This is for you guys. This is a little thing just to keep you guys motivated in the future. What it'll do is over there, let me go over to the little developer stage. I made it so that on the developer stage, whoever owns this place, or like the group owner, their NPC right here is going to be replaced with the group owner or the person who owns the place. And I'll just do a little animation to say like, hey, I created this game. I programmed all of this. This way, it just gives you guys a little bit of like just a little motivation, because I know a lot of people when they start, they're like, oh, nice, I coded this. I'm stuck. And they give up. So just like having this, I just know that people are going to feel a lot better. So we're not going to code this part, but it's just there. Don't remove it. It's for you guys. Next, we have the event handling script. This is where we'll take care of the events, such as like if the player joins, this the firing of that will be all here. Next, we have the master file. So the master file is where all of the trick-or-treating actually happens. I left some of the code there so that we don't have to retype a lot of this, but right up here we have the speech that the NPC will be saying. So if you remember when you went up there and did the trick-or-treating, the NPC was like, oh, nice costume, or like had this little speech bubble about them. So this is like our little dictionary. A dictionary is a list of like specific things attached to a value. So these are just like some of the things that the speech, like this, the NPC is going to be saying, the speech bubble. Next, we have a little dictionary for the lights, because if you noticed, when you do ring the bell, the window light turns from black to yellow. So we have a little dictionary just identifying like the colors so that we can easily call them. Next, we have the little variable. A variable is where we can assign a value to a variable. So in our case, we'll be assigning the trick percentage chance to 25. That means that we're going to have a 25% chance that the player is going to experience a trick. And then for the possible tricks, we have these 4. So their clothes will be messed up, their colors will be messed up, the speed, or death. And then finally, we have under starter GUI, we have the UI. So if I enable this really quickly, this is where the candy counter will be shown so that the player will know like this is how much candy they have. There's also the leaderboard, so we'll create that as well. And in here is where we'll have it so that it will update the candy counter. So that's all that we have. Does anyone have any questions? Anyone stuck? Everyone good to go? Hopefully I didn't scare you. It's post-Halloween, so no one should get scared. No tricks. Alright, looks like everyone is good to go. Let me just pull up my code to reference. So, let's start. We're going to first go into the master script. What happens if we make the trick percentage over 100%? If you make it over 100%, nothing's going to happen, but when we get into the coding of determining, like, oh, they actually experienced the trick, it'll just see that, like, oh, the random number that they got was less than over 100%, so they're just going to experience the trick no matter what. And that's what I had to do for testing, because I did not want to sit and hope that I'll get a 25% chance of a trick, so I just made it so that it's just 100%. Alright, let's start. So, with this master file, we are going to first make it so that the lights are going to be able to turn on and off. I don't know how many of you are actually familiarized with the like functions, but what functions are is we can make it so that we can make it so that we call a specific function so that a specific lines of code will run, so that we don't have to repeat, keep on retyping the same stuff over and over. Rather, we could just call a function so that we don't have to do that. So what we're going to first do is we want to make it so that we have the lights go from over here. I'm going to show you. We want to make it so that these lights that you see go from on to off, so that we don't have to we don't want to make it so that when the player joins they're all on, because it's going to be a bit confusing, because if you remember, when you first join they're all off. So what we want to do is we're going to have to create a function. So along with me, we'll have to type local function, and then we'll have to give it a function name. In our case, we want to just edit the lights, so we'll edit house lights, open close parentheses, and then click enter. And there you go. You have a function. Now, with this function, we'll need to have in the parameters. Parameters are if you pass in something. So in our case, we're going to pass in the house object. And what it's going to do is it's going to allow us to get that house object, and we can manipulate it. So what we're going to do is we're going to have the house. Then we have to have a second parameter to identify whether or not we want the lights on or off. So we'll put down for our next parameter lights on and off. Right, I'm going to do a little pause so that everyone can catch up. Right, cool. Now, with the lights on and off, we need to first identify, is the lights going to be on or is it going to be off? So we're going to have to use a logic statement. The logic statement is just if, then, or else. So we're going to do this. If lights on, off, which is our parameter that we have identified in the second part after house. And what we're going to do is when we call this function, we want to say that we can put down in the parameter a string value, which is just going to be on or off. So in our case, we're going to just put down, if the lights are off, you have to have parentheses or it's going to cause an error, off, then, there you go. We have this little logic statement. Then we'll also need to put down else, because if it isn't off, then we know that it's going to be on. So we're going to have a little else statement right after. Okay? You all good? All right. Now that we have identified that the light is going to be either on or off, what we're going to do is we want to loop through the objects inside the house so that we know we can identify which one's a light. So we're going to use a for loop. So we're going to do for I, which is an index value, and we're going to call the value that we're actually going to be looking for, we'll call it object, so that we can easily understand, like, oh, we're trying to look for this object. Then you're going to type in pairs. Next, we want to do house, which is the house that we're going to be looking at. Dot house, which is, so like in here, we have the house, and then we have the house inside of it. So we can loop through the items that are inside this house. And we have to do, in order for this to actually loop through, you have to always put in, inside the pair of parentheses, we have to make it so that it's like a table. A table is just a collection or just like a list of things. So in our case, we're going to be putting in a table full of the objects. So we're going to put down get children. My voice is already starting acting weird. Then you're going to type do and then type enter. And there you go. You have created a simple for loop. So next, inside of each house, you'll notice that we have something called a window. And in each window, we have the light source. So inside of each house, we have like the window and then we have the light source. So what we want to do is we want to first identify if the object's name, which in our case, we want window. So what we'll do is do if the object dot name is equal to window. We want to make sure that we put we want to make sure we typed in correctly the name, because if we put lowercase window, then the script is going to just, like, this is not window. This is not, like, the one we're looking for. We have to make sure this is all correct. And then click put down then, and there we go. So now we identified that the object is a window. So because we identified that the object is going to be a window, what we could do is, let me go over here. For this house specifically, let's just say, we go here, let's go over here, and then let's go to this random window right here. Let's find the right window so we can, here we go. So now that we have the window, we'll just go right here, which is the light source. We want to set the color from daisy orange to black so that it will make it so that it looks like it's dark in the house, where like the lights aren't on. And we also have attached to it the surface light. We'll have to make it so that that light color is also black, or not black, but like it's disabled. That's a better way to say it. Yeah, we want to make it so that the light is disabled. So as you can see, if we disable it, there's no light coming outward. If it's enabled, light's coming out. So we'll just want to make sure that the surface light is disabled. So inside the master script, we'll do object dot light source dot color is equal to, now if you remember earlier, I brought up we have this little table with light colors. We have the black and then the yellow. In our case, because we want the lights off, we're gonna have to use the black. So you'll just have to do light colors, type in black. So now what it's going to happen is it's going to look at this table right here, and because we put down we want to look at the black, it's going to go to black, and it's going to set the color to 0. Next, we'll want to make it so that the surface light is disabled. Why do you need to table that? So I did it in a table just so that I could give you guys an idea of like using dictionaries or tables. You don't have to do it in a table. You can actually make this into a variable. So you can do black is like local black. So here, you can also do it this way. You can do local black is equal to color 3 from RGB 000. This is the same thing as this. But I felt that just having like a table to do it is a lot more efficient. Is that the normal brackets or the square brackets in the black? Are you referring to the from RGB? The part where we need... Oh, those are square brackets. You aren't using the I and the for loop. Why is that? Why is it there? Sometimes you don't need to use the index value. It really depends on the situation. For us, we're not going to be using it. But typically, if you're trying to loop through, let's just say you're looping through houses, you could just use the I. Next. All right, let's continue. So as I brought up, we'll have to make it so that the surface light is, but this guy hasn't removed I. Not necessarily, Zois. You can leave it with I. It's up to you. It doesn't really matter. Next, you'll want to make it so that the light for the surface light is the enabled property is disabled, so that so that the light source is disabled, so that it's no longer active. So what we'll want to do is we'll do object dot light source dot surface light dot enabled is equal to false. This way it'll make it so that this little check mark goes away, and so that it's no longer enabled, and it will just turn it off. Get children, what we'll do is it will go inside of the house. So we have the house, then inside we have the actual house model. And what it's going to do is going to get the list. So it's going to retrieve all of this. So all of these parts are inside the house. And it's going to create like a little table. So, yeah. Alrighty. So now that we have it so that the lights are going to be off in that case, what we want to do is we'll make the same thing if the lights are on. So what we could do to make it a little simpler is we can copy lines 37 through 42. Just copy it. And then inside of line 44, right here, we'll just click Control V or paste. And now that because the lights are going to be off, or on, sorry, we'll need to make it so that the light colors, like the table, is going to be referring to yellow. So the lights will turn back on. And the object, which is the surface light, is enabled. Right? So, true. All right. So we're going to replace, because one of the users is requesting it, we're going to replace the I. You don't have to do this, but we're going to replace the I with an underscore right here. It won't do anything really differently. It's just memory. Some people really care about the memory portion, so we'll make sure that it's all good. I'm using strings just so that it's a lot easier for people who are learning to program to understand this is what the lights are going to be off or the lights are going to be on. You can use true or false statements, but in our case we're just going to use the on and off just so that people understand what's going on. All right. I'm going to, what does local and pairs do again? So the local is identifying like either for example, line 32, local, we are trying to identify that this variable name, trick percentage chance, is equal to a specific value. So in our case, this percent chance is going to be 25. Or like over here under that line, under line 33, we have a table with the possible tricks. So we're creating a variable called possible tricks, and we're setting it equal to a value. Within pairs, you're fine asking these questions, don't worry. What we're doing is we're trying to loop through a table. So in our case, we have to use in pairs. That's just what the Lua syntax is. So, yeah. Oh, wait, why did he? Oh, I'm so sorry. I mistyped something. So under line 40, you're supposed to type light source, not light source. Yes, it's light source. Aru, yes, this will be posted on YouTube. I will also post this on to the developer forum. Thanks for catching that, Peter. I did not catch that, and that would not be fun to debug. Because that would have been like, oh, I typed it, mistyped it. Alrighty. We're all good? Yes. Thanks, Mac. That I wanted to bring up. Please remember that this event is for beginners. It's more aimed towards beginners. That's why I used string values to check, because it's a lot more understandable for beginners. Like, oh, it means that we're going to have these lights off or on. We could have used true and false, but yeah. May I know the object is referring? Could you rephrase what you said, XXR3STR? I kind of don't understand what you mean by that. All right. Anyone, I'm going to do a little break. I'm just going to upload this code, like upload this file to the folder so that people who join late under can join along. Give me 1 second. All right. So what object is because we're going through a list, like, so because we're returning a table, here, you know what? I'm going to do this. This will make it a lot easier. I'm going to print out, you don't have to do this, but you can if you want to. Houses, house one, house, yeah, children. There you go. All right. So inside, so if we use get children, what it does is it returns this table. So if you see here, we have a list of all the parts that are inside this table. So what we're doing is, because we're looping through this table, we have to give it like a generic name just so that we can understand that. So what we're going to do is we're going to check if this object, which right here we have in the table, is named window. And if it is named window, then we want to do something with that window. All right, let's move on. So because we have the function, now we need to do something with this function. We just don't want it to be there for decoration. So what we're going to do is, at the beginning, we're going to loop through this house, like through the houses folder. So as you can see, we have this little houses folder. We're going to loop through that and have this function called. So along with me, we're going to do for I house in pairs. And what we're going to do is we're going to do game.workspace, which is this, .houses, get children. So now we have this object, which is going to be the house, and we're going to be looping through the houses folder to go through each house. And what we're going to do is we're going to call the function edit house lights, and in our first parameter, we're going to put down the house. And in our case, because we want to start off the game with nothing, we don't want any house, like we want the lights off, we're going to set the second parameter to off. Yes, it doesn't really matter, cursed. I just made it so that it's a bit understandable. You can use workspace, you can get game workspace, doesn't matter. but just to make it simpler for beginners, I just use the game.workspace. Alrighty, so now that we have the house lights going off, we're going to start, just like we're going to test out the game. And as you can see, the lights all went off. Alright, so I did 2 loops just to make it so that it's understandable for beginners, but what you could do if you wanted to is you could just have 1 loop, and if the object's name is window, then it's going to check, yeah, I was planning to go back and to make it a lot more efficient, but essentially what it's going to do is just it's going to check to see like, oh, if the object's name is window, then it's going to check is the light on or off, then determine like, oh, okay, we need to do this. But just for simplicity's sake and like for beginners to understand, I just made it so that there's 2 for loops. You don't have to do it this way. It's up to you. It should do the same thing. There isn't really much of a difference. All right. I hope none of you are confused with the code. I hope none of you are scared off. Thank you so much, Mac, for the explanations. It's kind of hard for me to catch along as I'm typing. Alrighty. Next, let me just pull up my code for reference. Alright. So now that we have that we want the lights to go off, next we want to make it so that before we get into like the actual trick-or-treating kind of stuff, we want to make it so that the player like we have a list of all the possible costumes that the NPCs can have, because the NPCs are going to have to wear a costume in our code, because it would kind of be a bit boring if the NPC just came out as their normal old NPC look. So what we're going to do is we have, give me 1 second. Okay. So now we first want to make it so that we have this table or like an array of like the list of costumes that are available. So we're going to create this little variable called available costumes, and we're going to set it to a table. We want this table to be empty, because what you can do in the future is when you go into the folder costumes under replicated storage, you can add more. We don't want to keep on having to add in. So making it simpler is best. So what we're going to do after we for loop through this house, for loop, we're going to first do for I underscore, well, we're going to do costumes, or costume, just for clarity's sake, in pairs. And what we're going to do is we're going to loop through the costumes folder. So what we're going to do is we're going to do game.replicated storage. Hold on 1 second before you get the game get service stuff out. Dot costumes get children. Then we're going to type 2 and end. Next, what we want to do is we want to add in every costume that's available into the available costumes. So we're going to use the function table.insert. This is one of the built-in things that Roblox has. So what we're going to do is we're going to do table.insert. And for our first parameter, we have to put down the available costumes table. So we're going to do available costumes. Then inserted, what we want to insert is we want to insert the costume's name so that it's a lot easier to read off of. So we'll just do costume.need. And what it's going to do is it's going to loop through all the available costumes. It's going to look at the folder. It's going to get its name. So in our case, we're going to get clown. and we're going to add that name into the available costumes table. This way we could randomize the number, like the costume that the NPC is going to be wearing. All right. I'm going to publish this. Next, I'm going to save file, just so that whoever joins late, they can refer to this. Give me 1 second. I'd like to bring up while I do this. At the bottom left corner of your screen, you'll see like the little QA system. That way you could put in your QA questions. Yeah, so the player doesn't really see it. It'll load everything when they first join, but we don't want the player to see it. It would kind of look weird to see costumes floating above, so it's best to put it there. All right. Alrighty. I uploaded the file, so if anyone is stuck, they can refer to that file. Alrighty. Now, let's start with the fun part, where we want to make it so that the player can actually, ring the doorbell. So what we're going to do is we're going to use something called a proximity prompt. A proximity prompt is something new that Roblox added. It's essentially that little prompt that you saw when you walked up to the doorbell. So what we want to do is we want to make it so that the player is able to ring the doorbell. Did I miss anything? No, you didn't miss anything, Peter. Available costumes is just a folder that's in the replicated storage. Oh, yes, sorry. Yes, you have to put down one of the variables as local costumes, which is our little array. All right. So, from here, what we want to do is we want to loop through all the houses. So we have all these houses. And what we're going to do is we want to put inside the doorbell and inside the ringer, we want to add in this proximity prompt so that the player can ring the doorbell, so that it's not, they have to press it. It's better to just have them do a keybind, or if they're on mobile, they just have to tap or hold down. So what we're going to do is we're going to do for I house in Paris game.workspace.houses get children do end. So now we have all the houses. I know it's going to be a little bit repetitive up here, but just so it's a bit simpler for people to understand, we'll do it this way. Next, we want to create the instance, the proximity prompt. So what you're going to do is you're going to create a variable called local proximity prompt. And we're going to use Roblox's built-in instance, which is the proximity prompt instance, .new. Oh, I misspelled it. There you go. Instance.new. And inside the parentheses, we're going to do proximity prompt. So you should see it like right here. All right. Next. So do we want to really make this, hey, you should probably teach them about do not repeat yourself. Yes. First, that's one of the things I'll be bringing up later. That's why I'm doing it right now. So what we're going to do is with this proximity prompt, first, do we really want to make it so that the player just taps and instantly rings the doorbell? It might be a bit, sometimes what will happen is the player might mispress something and it'll just ring it and it's like, oh, I do not want to do that. So maybe we want to make it so that the hold duration is a bit longer because it starts off at 0. So what we're going to do is we're going to do proximity prompt dot. And as you can see, these are all the available properties that come with the proximity prompt. So what we want to do is we want to do the hold duration. And we want to set that to 1 second. what we'll do is you have to hold down on the proximity prompt for a second before something will happen. Okay. Next, inside of the proximity prompt, you're able to set a specific text so that the player will know, like, oh, I need to do something with this proximity prompt. So what we're going to do is we're going to do proximity prompt dot action text, which is this, and we're going to set it equal to, in our case, we want to do ring. We want to ring it. Next. One of the things I noticed with the proximity prompt is sometimes, depending on your positioning, it's a bit harder to see the proximity prompt. So what we're going to do is we're going to do proximity prompt dot require line of eyesight, or line of sight. We don't want that on. We want to just make it so that the player can just like walk up to it and they can see it. Does autofill just not appear on stream? Likely cursed. I don't know. There's some sort of delay. I can't really do much about it. So we want to set the requires line of sight equal to false. We want it so that the player can just be next to it. They don't have to like face it, or they have to look at it, or be in a certain position. We just want it so that it just like, if they're within range, then it will appear. Finally, what we want to do is we want to parent this. It's just creating it, but it's not going to be, it's not going to show up if we don't parent it. So what we want to do is just do proximity prompt dot parent. In our case, we want to set the parent to the doorbell ringer. So we will do house dot house dot doorbell dot ringer. So now what's going to happen is it's going to create a proximity prompt. It's going to have a whole duration of 1. It's going to have the text of ring, also not requiring line of sight, and it's going to parent it so that we can actually see the proximity prompt to the ringer. So if we try this out, let's go up to one of the doors. Should be no errors. I think we're good. We just go up here, and there you go. And if you hold down E, it'll take 1 second, and there you go. You have a proximity prompt that will show the ringer. All right. Now that we have the ringer, there you go. Alrighty. So add in a few extra lines. So with proximity prompts, you're able to actually fire an event. Events are fired when something specific happens. So for instance, if the player joins, there's an event called player added, which will fire, and you can set up specific things that happen with the player. So you might want to set up their data. You want to set up, oh, I want the player to look like this. I want the player to have this. I want that. So we use event fires so that specific things happen when a specific event fires. So in our case, we're going to do the proximity prompt dot triggered, which is the event that will fire when the player holds it down. Connect function. We're going to create a function inside of this, and afterwards just click enter right here, and you should have a function. So with every proximity prompt, when it fires, it's going to identify who actually fired it. So inside the function parentheses right here, you have like 2 little parentheses. We want to put down that who's firing it is the actual player. Okay? All right, I'm just going to wait a little bit so everyone can catch up. You all are good? Nothing overwhelming? All right, good. Alrighty. So, with when you fire the event, we want the player to stop. We don't want them to move. Not overwhelming. This is underwhelming. the E hold thing didn't work for me. We don't have a specific function right now, so it won't do anything. You'll just hold it and it's like, oh, nice. So with the proximity prompt, we want to make it so that when the player fires it, so when they hold down E for a few seconds and it finishes, it reaches that 1 second, we want something to happen. So in our case, we want the doorbell to ring. We want the NPC to come out. Well, the thing is, it didn't appear. Make sure you parent it. So what we want to do is, first, we want the player to not move. We don't want the player to walk around when someone's giving you candy. That's kind of weird. So what we want to do is, first we want to identify the character of the player. So we have the player instance. Here, I'm going to click play just to show you. So inside of the player service, we have the players. So in our case, we have me. And this is where we put like stuff into the backpack, anchor the character temporarily, or we're gonna set them to 0 because if we anchor them, they're gonna just not move like at all, and that does not look lively. So what we're going to do is inside of the player instance, we have the player, which is me, but we want to also call our actual character, which is referring to right here, this. So what we're going to do is we're going to do local character is equal to the player, which in my case it's going to be me who's going to be ringing it, dot character. Alrighty. Just for right now, I'm gonna upload the code once more. Pacoli, I'm going to upload this for you so that you can, so you're not left behind. Part 3. There you go, Pacoli. I uploaded it for you. So if you look in that folder, here, I'll type it in the chat for you. There you go. If you go there, then you'll be able to access the files. All right, let's get back onto this. All right. So now that we have identified the player's character, inside of every character, there's a humanoid. A humanoid it gives life to an object. So in our case, it's giving life to the player. So inside of the humanoid, I'm going to play again so I can show you. So inside the player's character, so under Woolly Wool, you'll see humanoid. And we have a list of list of properties. So for our case, in order to make it so that the player doesn't move, we're going to set the walk speed to 0. So we're going to go here. We're going to do character dot humanoid dot walk speed is equal to 0. So now if you go and try this out, if we use local, well, you have to use local because that's the Lua syntax. But when we want to identify a variable, it makes it a lot shorter for coding, so you don't have to retype it. So if we ring the doorbell, look, I'm not able to move. I'm not able to walk. Perfect. So, next, we want the doorbell to ring so that it doesn't sound stale. So, in each house, we have this little doorbell sound. So what we're going to do is we're going to, inside the doorbell ringer, we just want the sound to play. So because we're looping through each house and we're creating a specific event firing right here, we're going to make it so that the specific house, so we're going to do the house dot doorbell dot ringer dot doorbell sound, because we're referring to the sound object right here. We want it to play. So if you go over here, if we start, and we walk over to the house, and if we just ring the doorbell, as you can see, it just makes it so that, you know, it'll ring the doorbell. People name their variables differently. It depends on the programmer. For me, I prefer Pascal case, or if I were just to refer to the character, I'll use not snake case, camel case. But it's always up to the programmer. There isn't really, everyone has to follow a certain way. I'm just doing this for understanding something so that it's not confusing for people. Alrighty. So what we want to do is, after the player rings this doorbell, we want first the proximity prompt to disappear, because we don't want the proximity prompt to be there, because what will happen is if it stays there, they're able to just be like, oh, let me ring it again, let me ring it again, and this thing will fire over and over and over, and that will just not be what we want. So we'll do proximity prompt dot enabled, and we're going to set the enabled to false, so that now when the player rings the doorbell, it's gone, it's not there, the proximity prompt is gone. And what we also want to do is we want to wait just a few seconds so that the player is just like, they wait a little bit rather than just being like, oh, you rang the doorbell, here comes the NPC. No, we want to make it so that they have to wait a few seconds. So we're going to use Roblox's new wait system, which is a lot more accurate, because if we just do wait time, then it's not going to do anything. It's not going to, how do I say this? It's not going to be as accurate. That's a better word. And it's kind of deprecated too. So we have to use this new function. So we're going to use task.wait. And we're going to wait, in our case, 2.5 seconds. Just so that the player, like, rang the doorbell, they have to wait a few seconds. Next, after those 2.5 seconds, what we want to do is we want to make it so that the lights turn on. So we're going to use our function that we have. Edit house lights. Oh. We're going to set the house as the parameter, and we want it on. So now, when you test this, and you go up to the house, when you ring it, the proximity prompt goes away and the lights turn on. So now we're going to work with the NPC. So what we want to do is first, before we even get to the NPC, we want to first identify, oh, is the player going to get a trick or are they going to get a treat? So what we're going to do is we're going to create a function to determine what they're going to get. So above all of this, so let's do it like right here. Yeah, we're going to use math.random. We're going to make it a little spicy. So what we're going to do is we're going to do local function. We're going to do determine trick or treat. Trick, treat. And enter. So we'll have a little function. Up here, you'll see that the trick percentage chance is 25. So what we're going to do is first we're going to create a variable called let's call this type. This is going to be the type of whether or not they're going to get a trick or treat. We're going to currently set it to treat for right now. So what we're going to do next is we're going to do a random number. So we're going to use something called math.random, as Peter has brought up earlier. We're going to do, we're going to call this variable randomizer. So we do this randomizer. And we're going to set it to the function math.random. And so with math.random, you have to set up at a certain interval. So we're going to set it to start at 1, and it's going to go up to 100. And it's going to choose a random number between 1 to 100. Next, we want to identify that, so with the randomizer, we need to first say that, like, okay, is this number going to be greater than, or is it going to be less than this, the trick percentage chance? So what we're going to do is we're going to do if the trick percent chance, or not the, sorry. I meant if the randomizer, here's a better way, if the randomizer is less than trick percentage check. And we don't want to do just less than. We want to do less than or equal to. Oh, sorry. There we go. If it's less than or equal to the trick percentage chance. So if the random number is less than, type is just a variable name. It doesn't really matter right now. If randomizer is less than or equal to the trick percentage chance, what's going to happen is we're going to make it so that the type is going to be equal to a trick. It means that the player, because they reached a certain threshold that, oh, this is going to be a trick, then they're going to receive a trick. So after we've determined that whether or not they're going to get a trick or a treat, we want to return type. What return does is going to return what the variable comes out to be. This will help reduce the number of lines that we'll be using. So down here, we're going to create a variable called local. Let's call this trick or treat. And we're going to set it equal to the function determine trick or treat. And it's going to return to us whether or not it's going to be a trick or a treat. All right? So I'm going to save this off for someone. Just going to give you guys like a few seconds so that you guys can type that down. Okay, everything is uploaded. That's fine, Golden. That's why I'm gonna just give a little pause. Alrighty. Everyone on track? Right. Alrighty. All right, let's set, so now that we have determined whether or not a type will either be trick or treat, yes. Is headlight edit house lights a function? Yes, it is. Okay, so now that we have it so that we can determine if it's a trick or a treat, now we want to set up the NPC, which is that little player that's going to appear in front of the player. So first we're going to create a variable called local NPC. Then up here below the determine trick or treat, we're going to create a function to set up NPC. So we're going to do local function set up NPC. And because we're going to be positioning the NPC so that we know, we want to set up the NPC so that they're positioned in the correct area, we want to put down for their parameter the house. Okay. That's fine, Peter. Everyone learns different ways. There's always a way to learn programming, and it takes some people longer than others. There's people who do it differently. It's the learning that matters. If you learn and you can understand it and you're able to edit, do something with it, it's nice. So, from here, we're going to create a clone of the NPC. So the NPC that's right down in assets right here. So we're going to call this NPC clone. And we're going to set it equal to game dot replicate storage dot assets dot NPC, and we're going to clone it. So we're going to use the clone function that Roblox provides. Afterwards, all right. Now that we have their clone, now we want to determine what their random costume is going to be. So we're going to do local random costume is equal to available costumes. We want to call that specific table the available costumes, and we're going to do open and close brackets. So because we don't have anything, where is it? Because we're for the available costumes, because it's going to come out to be like 1 is equal to this costume name, 2 is equal to this costume name. Because we're not setting a specific index, which would be either 1, 2, or 3, Roblox's default is going to be 1, 2, or 3. If we were to set, like, I don't know, clown is equal to clown, that would be an index. Like, we're setting the clown index is equal to a clown value. So what we're going to do is we're going to do math.random 1, which is our beginning interval, and the number of things that are inside the available costumes table. We don't want to put down an arbitrary value like 4 because it could grow, and we don't want to come back over and over. So just setting it to the number of available costumes is best. Okay. So now that we have the random costume determined, what we're going to do is we're going to loop through the folder with the costume and put it onto the NPC. So we're going to do for I, we'll call the value just object to make it simple, in pairs. And what we're going to do is we're going to do game.replicate storage.costumes, and we're going to use find first child, which is going to find the specific folder that we're calling, which is going to be the random costume. So find first child, and we're going to put down for the parameter random costume. And we have to get the children. So now we're going to be looping through. So let's just say that the random costume is clown. It's going to go to this clown, and it's going to loop through all this. So do. And. Now, we're going to first, we want to identify if the object is the face, because we have to set that specific value to it. Hello, Rel. Wait a few more minutes because I'll put a new file up there so that you can tag along. So first we want to see if the object's name is face, lowercase face, because if it is, then we have a specific thing for the specific for that object. If not, then we can just clone and parent it to the NPC. So we're going to do if object dot name is equal to face. So if it's equal to face, then, and then we also want to add in the little else in between. In our case, so if it isn't face, we're going to just do object clone. We're going to clone that specific object. We're going to parent it as well. We're going to do this all in one. Can you re-explain the find versus out? Sure, give me 1 second. And we're going to also parent it to the NPC clone. So find first child makes it so that you can find whether or not the specific thing you're trying to find. So like, let's just say we're trying to find clown. So what we could do is we could just do game.replicate.costumes find first child clown, which is going to find us the specific like folder, and we're going to call that specific folder and get its children, because sometimes it doesn't exist, and if it doesn't exist, then it's going to return an error, which will break the whole code. So if it can't find it, then it won't do anything. So now that we have the NPC clone having objects added to the NPC clone, so we have like, so in our case, it's going to clone the pants, it's going to clone the shirt, it's going to clone the accessory and put it onto the NPC. And so from there, we will do, so if the object's name is a face, what we're going to do is we're going to do NPC clone. So hold on 1 second. So in the NPC, under their head, we have this face. Face is going to help, like it's going to have like the face that's attached to every player, or to the NPC in this case. So what we're going to do is we're going to do NPC dot head dot face, and what we want to do, since this is a decal, we want the texture. We want to set the texture. So we're going to do dot texture is equal to object dot texture. We're going to set that face texture of the NPC clone to the object's texture. All right, so I'm going to upload this. Give me 1 second so I can upload this. There you go. So the object is so that the why did I say object? The place is now in the folder, so it's under Trick or Treat Attendee version part 5. Okay. Alrighty. I'll just wait a few seconds so that everyone can get caught up. I hope this is making a lot of sense. All right. Ready to continue? All right. So we need to do something specific. So if you remember, if I brought up at the beginning of the tutorial, there's an invisible door so that the player can't walk through it. So what we need to do is we have to use the physics services create a collision group. A collision group is essentially setting two objects can collide to a specific value. So let's just say if I set, so if the player joins, we can make it so that they're all can collide off with each other. So like the player can walk through each other, but we don't want it so that they can fall through the map. Because if they fall through the map, that's not fun. So we have to make it so that it's only collidable for these specific objects. So at the top of the script, let's go up here. We're going to do local. We're going to call the physics service. We're going to set that equal to game get service physics service. So now that we have the physics service, give everyone a few seconds. All right. Before we do any of that, actually, we need to do one more thing. We need to create 2 groups. Can you scroll back again? Yep, I'm back up because I have to type in a few things. So with the physics service, we first need to create 2 collision groups. We need to create the NPC's collision, and we want to create the invisible door collision. So what we're going to do is we're going to do physics service, create collision group. And in our case, we're going to do this one as NPC parts. And we need to do one more. We need to do one more. We need to do physics service, create collision group, and we're going to call this one invisible door. Okay. Wait just a few seconds. Okay. So, back to the NPC setup. We need to first put in objects into the collision group. So what we're going to do is we need to create a for loop. We're going to loop through the NPC's parts. And if it's a base part, which is just like a normal part, then we're going to put that part into the collision group. So what we're going to do is we're going to for loop through the NPC. So we're going to do for I. We're going to call this part. In pairs, NPC clone get children. So it's going to return, I can't type, it'll return the list of objects that are inside the NPC clone. Next, we want to check if this is a base part, because if it isn't a base part, we're going to be setting something into a collision group that we don't want, and it will cause an error. So what we're going to do is we're going to do if the part, we're going to use the function is a base part. So if it is a base part, then it's going to continue. So we're going to do that. And we're going to set the specific part into the collision group. So we're going to do physics service, set part collision group. We're going to do part. In our case, we want to set it to the collision group NPC parts. Okay, let me make sure. Yep, we're good. Okay. All right. From there, we also want to set the, so if you remember in every single house, let's let me go to a house. In every single house, they have an invisible door. So because we are passing in the house, we want to also set the part collidable to the house dot invisible part. Or not invisible part, invisible door, sorry. So, and we want to also set that, we want to make it so that that part is inside the invisible door group. Okay. I hope I'm not going too fast. Right. Alrighty. Now that we have the two groups with the parts inside of it, we're going to do physics, service, set, group, collision group set collidable. Sorry. Make sure. Yep. And we're going to set the two groups, which is going to be the NPC parts, invisible door, and we want to make it so that they can you back up just a little fast? Sure, let me go to the top just really quickly. There you go. Let me know when you're done so I can go back. Alright, let me go back down because I'm going to assume you're done. So we want to make it so that these two parts, that like the two groups that have the parts inside each one, so that they can their can collide is off. What happens if when you set it off is so that the parts are inside that specific group, and like each group they can go through each other. There isn't like a wall they can just walk through. So let's set it to false. Then we want to bring the clone to the world, so we're going to do npc clone dot parent, and we're going to set that equal to the workspace. So we're going to do equal to game dot workspace. But we have one more thing. We want to position this character. One thing in each house I forgot to bring up is there is a spawn. What we're going to do is we're going to C-frame the NPC to the spawn. So what we're going to do is we're going to do NPC clone. We're going to do set primary part C-frame. This is a function in case you have like a model. You want everything to move. Like you want to move everything that's within that model to a specific place. Yes. And what we're going to do is inside this little parentheses, we're going to do house dot house, and we're going to call the NPC spawn. So a C-frame is short for coordinate frame. What it's going to do is it's going to allow the programmer to position specific parts in specific areas. So what we're going to do is we're going to position the NPC to the spawn that's invisible, that's behind the door, so that the player, like the NPC, is just like standing there. Yep. What Max said. So what we're going to do is we're going to position the NPC to the NPC spawns. And we're going to set it to their C-frame. And I mistyped that. There you go. But we have one problem. If we just set it to their C-frame, like to the NPC spawn C-frame, the NPC might clip through. And that won't be fun. It would not be fun to see a vampire fall through the world into the void. So what we need to do is we need to raise the NPC on the y-axis. And we want to give it a specific value, because if we make it too high, they might clip through the house. Or if we put it too low, they just might clip through the wall. Or not through the wall, through the ground. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply it by a C-frame dot new. We're going to set the x to 0 since we don't really care about that. And now we're going to do something a little advanced, but trust me, this is going to be a bit helpful. So what you're going to do is you're going to use the function with the model npc clone get extent size. This is a function that will return the size of the model. So it's going to give you the x, y, and z. In our case, we want the y value of that. So we're going to do dot y. And with that y value, so let's just say that the NPC player is 5 studs long. If we just set it so that we just get the y right now, it's possibly going to clip through. Because when you set the C frame, it's going to position the NPC clone to the center of the NPC spawn, if you know what I mean. So we want to make it so that we get the size, so let's just say it's 5, and we're going to divide it by 2. So when we divide it by 2, we're going to get half of its size and raise it by half of its size upward. After that, let's put all this into parentheses, just in case, because sometimes the math functions are a bit weird. And we're also going to set it so that the z has nothing to do with it. So now what we are going to do is, now it's going to position the NPC to the NPC spawn, and it's going to raise it up half of its size so that it's positioned. Okay? Hope that makes sense. Just going to wait a little bit so that everyone can catch up and I won't go too fast. Alright. Now that we have it positioned, what we're going to do is we want to return this NPC, like the object. So we're going to return NPC clone. So now that we have returned it, what we're going to do is we're going to set this variable down here, the local NPC, is equal to setup NPC, the little function that we have, and we're going to set inside the parameter the house. So now we have the actual NPC, and the NPC is positioned. So what we're going to do with that, one second. So what we're going to do is, now that we have the NPC is positioned there, but we can't see him because we have a door there. So what we're going to do is we're going to move the door. We're not going to do the rotating because it's a bit complex and I don't want to scare people away. So we're just going to use C-frames and move it. So what we're going to do is we're going to do house dot house, and we're going to call the front door. So dot front door. And we're going to set the C-frame. So set primary part C-frame, and hopefully I can type. And what we're going to do is, first we need to get their current C-frame. So we're going to do the house dot front door. We're going to use the function get primary part C-frame. So now that we have its current C-frame, we want it so that it goes backwards. In order for it to go backwards, we're going to have to use the x-axis. And because of the door's rotation, I had to experiment with this. Because of the door's position, we're going to have to make it so that it goes backwards in the positive x direction. So we're going to multiply it by the C-frame dot new. We're going to multiply it by, so it goes backwards by 7 studs. It's not going to move up or down, and it's not going to move left or right. So if we test this out, what's going to happen is if we go up to the door. If we ring it, and we have an error. Yes, we do. Invisible door does not remember. Give me 1 second. Most of. This is what debugging is like. You have to find invisible door. Where is it? Oh. Ah. Wait. Oh. I mistyped it. Sorry. Line 89. So I mistyped invisible. Whoops. Happens. So on line 89, which is right here, we're going to do invisible, not invisible. So there you go. Sorry about that. So if we go back and test this. We're going to walk up to the same house. Ring it. And there's also another error. Give extent size is not a valid number. Did I read? Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. I wonder if I mistyped something. Oh. Sorry. I meant extent size. So there you go. Yep. Sorry about that. So now we have the extent size. See, this is what happens. This is debugging. So luckily it wasn't something major. It was mostly just a typo. Sometimes there are major bugs that you'll have to go through every single function. So luckily for us, it was just a typo. So if we go over here, ring the doorbell, the door should move. There you go. Door moved. Yay. Look, there's a vampire. So the random costume did its thing, and I created it, and the vampire's there. Nice. All right. So now that we have the door positioned, in front of every single door, wait 1 second. In front of every single door, we have this part called NPC final. This is going to have the NPC walk over to this position. So what we're going to do is we're going to do NPC dot humanoid. We're going to use the function move to. And what it's going to do is we're going to move it. Usually you can use a vector, which is just an X, Y, Z, to determine what position you want it to be at. But in our case, we're going to have it so that they move to the specific part, NPC part. So what we're going to do is we're going to do house dot NPC final dot position. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go over and test this. We're going to walk over. We're going to ring it. And look at that. The NPC moved over there. Right? I'm going to upload this code so that I don't lose people. Part 6. I go to the folder, upload it. There you go. So if anyone tagged along a little late or they're still stuck, I uploaded the file so that you can join along. All right, I'm just going to wait a few seconds so everyone can. The stream might go a little bit longer over 5 o'clock. This is typical with any tutorial. I thought 2 hours was fine, but it's going to take a bit longer because of the many things we have to code. All right. So now that we have the NPC moving, we want to have it speak. So we're going to have to call the chat service. So we're going to create the variable local chat service is equal to game get service chat service, which is just chat. So we have the chat service. So what we're going to do is we want the NPC to speak. And since we have determined whether or not it's going to be a trick or a treat, and we have the table up here, trick or treat, it's going to choose randomly between this and this for the number for the thing that they're going to say. So what we're going to do is we're going to do chat service. We're going to use the function chat, and we want the NPC's head to be speaking. So we'll do NPC dot head. And for what to say, we're going to do chat speeches, which is that table. We're going to do whether or not it's trick or treat, because it's either going to be a trick or it's going to be a treat. So we're going to determine whether or not it's going to be a trick or a treat. And then we're going to have to randomize, because as you can see here, there's 4 options. So we're going to have to randomize based on the number. So what we're going to do is we're going to do that. We're going to also have an open brackets here. And we're going to do math.random. We're going to have 1. And for the range, it's going to be number of chat speeches. And we want trick or treat. So it's going to determine just based on a random number. Okay? So if we test this out, and we walk over, go over here, we're going to ring it. There you go. So for us, it's going to be a treat, and it chose a random speech to say. So nice. So let's stop. So now that we have the NPC speaking, now we're going to actually do the part where we're going to do something to the player, whether or not they're going to have a trick or treat. But before we do that, we have to do something else. So for right now, we have gone through and we have identified whether or not they have a trick or treat. But in order to actually do something, we're going to have to create some values for the player, because if you remember, they have a specific number of candy. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the event handling place. Yep. Okay, 1 second. I'm going to just pull up certain code. Okay. So we're going to do something it's going to be a little advanced, but trust me, it's going to be well worth it. So we're going to have to create some data for this player. We're going to have to create that, they have this much candy. Or in the future, if you wanted to add your own data, they're going to have specific things. So inside server script service, we have this folder called server modules. We have something called the player data handler. Right now, it's just an empty module script. A module script. Module scripts are scripts that we can create functions that we can call in different scripts. So we don't have to retype over and over the same function. We just have to call this module script and call the specific function. So what we're going to first do is we want to have a large table filled with all the players' data, like every single player that's in the server. So we're going to create a table, we'll call it player data. And we'll set it to open and close curly braces. From there, we're going to create a function. So we're going to do function, because this is a module script and we want this to be called everywhere, we're going to do module dot set up data. And we're going to pass in, we want the player to be sent to us. So we want the player and enter. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is we need to identify the player specific. Like we have the player data, and inside the player data, we want to create another table that's the player's data. So we're going to create a variable called local. We're going to do new player table. And with this new player table, it's going to be either this. If the player had joined earlier and left, then rejoined, their data is still going to be within that table. So we're going to do player data, and inside here, to make it simpler, we're going to make it so that we're calling the player's name, which is their username. So we're going to do player.name. But if it's nil and it doesn't exist, then what we're going to do is we're going to have an OR. So if this isn't true, then we're going to have an OR. We're going to create empty table. Okay? And then from there, what we're going to do is we're going to set the player data. So we're going to do player data, the player's data. So we're going to do the player.name. And because we have identified new players table, whether or not their data exists or it doesn't exist at the moment, we're going to set it equal to new player table. So now we have the player's data. So in our case, we're going to have Candy, and we have it in a table. You can do this with instances, but I'm going to teach you guys a little efficient way where you don't have to depend on instances and use tables for data or dictionaries. Okay? So from there, we're going to create our first data point, or first and only one, which is just going to be the Candy. So we're going to do new player player table. So we have our player table. We're going to have the Candy value, so Candy, and we're going to set it equal to 0. Because right now when the player first joins, they're going to have nothing. But if you want to have the player start off with some candy, then you can set it to a specific value. But in our case, I'm going to set it to 0. Okay. Now, we're going to need to do a few more functions because this will be helpful when we use the data store service. We're going to want to return the player's data. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a function called return player data. So return player. We want the player, of course, for the parameter. And from there, we're going to just have it return player data. And we want to return their specific data, which is going to be player.name. Okay? Alrighty. From there, we have one more thing. So, with the player data, we want to be able to edit this player's data. So we're going to have to be able to edit their candy value. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a function so that we can actually edit it. So we're going to do function module dot edit candy value. We're going to have the player's data, so we're going to need the player. And we also need the value that we're going to add to the candy. So from there, first what we want to do is we're going to call the specific data for the player. So we're going to do player data, player dot name. Then we want the candy, so this part, the candy. Then from there, we're going to add. So we're going to do plus equal. This is like a little shortcut just to add, so you don't have to do plus is equal to player data, player.name, candy, plus the value. So it's easier just to do plus equals. and we're just going to add value. So there you go. And what's going to happen is sometimes we can set the value to be a negative number. And I don't think it's possible to have negative candy. So what we're going to have to do is if the player data, player's name, candy, is less than 0. If it's less than, then they have a negative number, which is impossible. So what we'll have to do is we'll just do player data, player dot name, their candy, is equal to 0. So that if it's a negative number, we can just set it to 0. Okay? All right, now that we have our function set up, let's create the event handling script. So we're going to use the player added function. So if the player joins, we can call the specific player to do specific things. So we're going to do game.players.playerAdded connect. We're going to create a new function within this player added, and what is returned to us is we have the player who just joined. So there you go. So from there, can you go back to the player dot? Sure. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. There you go. I'll just wait a few seconds. I don't rush you guys. All right. You guys ready to go? All right. Let's continue. So since the player, that's fine. It's up to them. So from there, what we need to do is before we do anything, we want to call the player data handler so that we can actually use their functions. So we're going to create a variable called local player data handler. And in order to use the functions that's inside of the player data handler, we're going to have to use the require function. And what we're going to do is we're going to do game.server script service .server modules .player data handler. So now that we have called this player data handler, what we're going to do is we're just going to do player data handler dot, and we're going to set up their data. So we're going to pass in the player. So now it's going to create their data. I'm going to upload this so that this will help out. Give me 1 second. All right, I uploaded it for you. Alrighty. So now that we have their data set up, if you remembered when we first joined that master file, there was this little leaderboard. So we're going to create the leaderboard. So within Roblox's functions, we'll have to create a folder called leader stats. You have to follow this specifically because this is how their setup was. So we'll create a folder. So we'll call it leader stats for the variable. We're going to do is equal to instance.new folder. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do leader stats dot name. We have to call it specifically leader stats because when it first is created, it's just going to be called it's going to be called just folder. So we want to make it so that it's called leader stats when they first join. Oops. And then we're going to parent this leader stats folder to the player. Nice. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do local candy value, which is going to be the value that you see on the player's leader stats, is equal to instance.new. We're going to put an int value. An int value is just an integer. We'll call this candy value dot name. We'll just call this candy. We're going to set the value to 0. And we're going to set the parent to the player, to the leader stats. Yep. There you go. So now, if we try the game, you'll see this. There's the leader stats value, and here's the candy. Alrighty? So, from there, if we go back to the player data handler, when we edit the candy value, what we're going to do is we're going to make it so that we set the value that the player's candy is after they change it. So, what we're going to do is because it's parented to the leader stats folder, we're going to do player.leaderstats. We're going to do find first child. We're going to find the candy, which is our candy value instance. And we're going to set that value equal to player data, player dot name, candy. So now we will set their candy value to the leader stats value that you see on the leaderboard, so that updates. All right. Let's go back to the master file. Give me 1 second. All right. So now that we have this, we're going to have to determine how much candy the player is going to gain or lose. So we're going to use the math random value again. So we're going to do candy gain or loss is equal to, and we're going to set the range. It's up to you. For me, I set it so that it's between 2 to 5 candies that they either lose or gain. And then from there, we need to first identify if the trick or treat that is returned, which was the either going to be trick or treat, if it's equal to treat, then we're also going to have a little else statement right here, in case. So now what we need to do is we need to create a function to give the player a treat. So let's create a function up here. Or over here. We're going to create a function. And we're going to call it give treat. And we're going to give the player treat. Okay. Give me 1 second. And we're also going to have the parameter, the amount that they're going to gain. So amount. Okay. What we're going to do is from there, first we're going to identify Oh, I forgot one important thing. So if you remember when the player was given a trick or a treat, there's those particles that are added to the player. We need to assign those particles. We need to give give the player the particles. Whoopsie. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the character added function that comes with the event that the Roblox comes with. So we're going to do player dot character added function. Oh, sorry. Connect then function, and that's going to be our character. Okay. When the character is added, what we're going to do is we're going to call, if you remember here, the candy explosion particles and trick or treat, the trick explosion particles. So what we're going to do is we're going to do game dot replicate storage dot assets dot candy explosion particles. We're going to clone it. We're also going to parent it to the character, and we're going to parent it to their humanoid root part. It's that invisible part that's next to the is like in place of the torso. So we're going to put it there. Humanoid root part. So now we'll have the candy there. And we also need to create a clone of the trick one. So we're going to do game.replicated storage assets trick explosion particles clone parent is equal to the character humanoid root part. Okay. From there, so I'm going to just show you guys something. So when I join and I go under my character and I look right under my humanoid root part, you'll see them right here. So here's the particle. Okay. So let me just stop it. I'll give you guys just a few more seconds. Okay. So now that we have that, let's go back to the master file. So now we have the give treat. I'll just pull up my code. Okay. So let's first call the character so that we can do that little magic with the particles. So we're going to do local character is equal to the player dot character. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to call first we got to do this. We need to get the player data handler module. So we're going to go right here and do local player data handler is equal to requiring game server script not physics service, can't type, server script service dot server modules dot player data handler. So now that we have that, let's go to the give tree. And we're going to do player data handler dot edit candy value. We're going to pass in the player, and we're going to put down that they're going to gain an amount. So what we're going to do is we're going to go for the explosion particles that you guys saw. So let's create a variable. We're going to do the candy explosion particles. is equal to, we're going to do this. So character dot humanoid root part. We're going to have to find it first, because sometimes if the player joins, it's not going to be there. So we're going to find first child, and it's called candy explosion particles. So we're going to do that. All right. And from there, we want to first check if it exists. So we have to check if it's not nil. So if candy explosion particles is not equal to nil, means it exists. Else, if it doesn't exist, what we're going to do is we're going to have to create the clone again. So we'll do game.replicate_storage.assets.candy explosion particles clone.parent is equal to character.humanoid root heart. There you go. Okay. Nice. All right. So from there, because we have we have either the candy explosion particles or we have to clone it and we parented it. Now we're just going to enable and disable it. So what we're going to do is we're going to do candy explosion particles dot enabled is equal to true. And we're going to use something called task.delay. It will make it so that the code doesn't yield, because if it yields, it's just going to pause the code and it has to wait until time's up, and we don't want that. So we're going to do task.delay. We're going to wait 0.2 seconds, and we're going to create a function. Okay. And all you have to do is just do candy explosion particles dot enabled is equal to false. So, and down here, we're going to do the same thing. No, hold on. I just caught myself. It's humanoid. Yeah. So from there, what we're going to do, because we have to create a clone, what we're going to do is we're going to do explosion particles again is equal to character dot humanoid root part. I can't type. Humanoid root part dot candy explosion particles. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing that we did up here. We can just copy and paste it, so it's a lot easier. So between lines 110 through 114, we're going to copy it, and we're just going to paste it right down here. So if we test this, we're going to ring it. And then there's an error. There isn't an error. Give me 1 second. Oh, you wanna know why? Because we never called this. Oh my god, we never called the function. I was so confused. We have to do give, treat, player, and then we're gonna put down. They're gonna gain and lose function. Sorry about that. I was like, it should do something. I promise. Alrighty. So let's test this. Let's go back. To be honest, I should have made it so that you can run faster so you don't have to sit through this. But let's go up here. Ring it. There you go. Look at that. Poof. And it added candy too. now that we have the treats done, trick-or-treating isn't just treats. We got tricks. It's not that fun. So now we're going to have to create a function for, for the tricks. Now we have to do one thing. Because we have down... Well, actually, let's hold off on that. Let's wait 1 second before we do the trick part, because you're going to see what I mean. So after this, we're just going to skip the trick part just for right now. After that, what we're going to do is after they give the trick or the treat, we're going to have the player wait, let's just say 2.5 seconds again. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have the little NPC say something again, and which is going to be the ending right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to do chat service, chat. We're going to have the NPC dot the head say from the chat speeches table ending. And then we have our trick treat. And then we're going to do the math dot random 1 and the number of chat speeches ending trick or treat. Okay. So now the NPC is going to say something like, "Oh, enjoy my trick. Oh, happy Halloween. Stay safe. Happy Halloween 1 week after." After that, what we want the player to wait a few seconds so they can read that. So we're gonna have them wait like 2 seconds. So let's do task.wait. 2 seconds. Then we're going to set the player speed back to 16. So character.humanoid.walk speed back to 16. And then from there, we want the NPC to walk back to the spawn so that they're not just standing out there and just disappear. So we're going to have the NPC walk. So we're going to do the NPC move to. And what we're going to have the move to is we're going to have the move to the spawn position. So we're just going to do house dot hold on. Yep, the house. Yep, right. The house dot NPC spawn dot position. Okay. We'll wait 1 second so that they can get there. And then after that, we're going to have, I'm going to make it a little quicker for you guys. We're going to copy line 160, the front door positioning. So since the door went backwards 7, we want them to go upwards. So we're just going to have it so that it's going to move in the -7 direction, the negative x direction. So we're going to have it move -7 in the x direction. Then from there, what we're going to do is after it moves, we're going to have the NPC get destroyed. So we're going to use NPC destroy. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have it wait. So we're going to use the delay function again. So we're going to do task dot delay. Let's wait like 2.5 seconds. Function. And then from there, what we want is we want the house to have the lights off again. So we're going to do edit house lights. We're going to have the house and off. And we have one more thing. We have to also make it so that the where is it? The proximity prompt is enabled again. So we're going to do proximity prompt dot enabled is equal to true. So if we try this out. And we walk over. The player... Hold on. The NPC should not just teleport. Hold on. Give me 1 second. NPC move to... Oh! Duh. We can't... No wonder why. We need to do .humanoid. We can't do... Because if we just do move to, it's just gonna teleport. So, it's gonna do .humanoid. So, let me try that one more time. Debugging 101 with Woolly Wool. Okay, so if we ring it. There you go, candy is given and walks back, and doors are closed 2.5 seconds later, and there you go. So there's your basic functionality for if they were giving a treat. Now, we need to talk about the trick part. So I'm gonna upload this code really quickly. I hope everyone is understanding what's going on. Trying to make it as simple as I can. Righty. Everyone's good? Okay. So, one thing I wanted to talk about is because we're giving a trick, and one of the tricks is the speed. So, one of the problems is if we just gave him a speed, let's just say he got it, reduce the speed, he's just gonna walk normal speed as of now. That's not fun. There's no trick in that. So what we have to do is we're gonna have to create a variable. Local trick is speed is equal to false. This is just for right now. But let's create the function for tricks. So let's create function. Sorry, local function. I forgot this is not a module. Local function give tree a trick. We have the player and the amount. There you go. Okay. First, we need the player's character. So we're going to do the local character is equal to player.character. Next, we need to determine a random trick. So we're going to do local random trick is equal to math. Hold on. It was, yep, math.random one number tricks. Hold on. Let me see what it was called. Possible tricks. Yep. Okay. All right. So now that we have that, we're going to first find. Hold on. Let's do something. So to make this a little bit quicker, we're gonna copy lines 107 to 125 because it's the same thing, just something different. So we're gonna do this. we're gonna do this. So we're gonna name the candy explosion particles to now trick explosion particles. We're gonna name this part the candy explosion particles to trick explosion particles. What we can do is we can just copy this so we don't have to retype it. Right here, we're gonna do this. So we're gonna paste it right here. I'm gonna paste it right here as well. And here. And then we're going right here. We have to clone the trick explosion particles. We also need to set the correct variable to that and that. And we have this and this. So now the trick particles will run. Now what we want to do is to make it a little bit like more of a suspicion, like, oh, what's my trick going to be? We're gonna wait a few seconds. So we're gonna wait 2 seconds. And then we're gonna have the trick explosion particles. Oh, hold on. We're gonna get rid of these 2 lines right here. We don't need this, and we don't need this. There you go. So we're gonna do the trick explosion particles enabled set to false. Okay. So from there, since we have the explosion particles enabled, not enabled anymore, now we need to create the function, the variable trick is speed. Right now it's going to be set to false again. So now we need to determine what random trick they got. So below here, we're going to do if possible tricks, putting inside of that find a random trick, is equal to close. That's the first one. Next, let's create another. We're going to use the else if. Else if the possible tricks random trick is equal to color okay, and the final next else if is if the possible trick is speed. Can you slow down just a little bit? Yes, I can. Sorry. Is equal to speed. And finally, we'll just put else. That one will be the death one. They die. No mercy. So let's wait a few seconds. Oh, and apparently Roblox was down for a few minutes. Luckily it didn't affect us. Alrighty. So, let's start. So if the possible trick was a close, what we're going to do is, if you remember here for the clothing, we're just going to set the pants and the shirt texture ID, the pants template and the shirt template ID equal to the player's clothes. Or actually, wait 1 second. Actually, we should not do that. One problem is, what if the player isn't wearing clothes? So we're not going to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to for loop through the player's character. We're just going to call object in pairs character get children. Okay, great. And we're going to check if the object is a shirt or object is a pants, then we're going to destroy the object. Then, after that, we're going to do game.replicate storage.assets.tricked clothing shirt. We're going to clone it. We're going to also parent it to the character. And we can just copy this line right here and replace it with pants. So now the player is going to have random clothes. Or not random clothes, but like clothes attached to them. You know what I mean? Alright. Everyone good? I hope. Alright. Now, color. What we're going to do is we're going to first find the body colors. Body colors is the instance that's attached to every single player that helps identify what their colors are. So what we're going to do is we're going to do local body colors. And I don't understand why they did this, but what we're going to do is we're going to do body colors is equal to character find first child body space colors. I don't know why they added the space. I'm just a programmer. So we're going to just roll with it. We could also look for the of class, but for right now we'll just do this way. And from there, we're going to do body colors dot head color 3. We're going to set the color of the head is equal to color 3 dot from RGB. We're going to do math dot random 1 through 255. We're also going to do math dot random 1 through 255. And for the B part, math dot random 1 through 255. Okay? And so that we don't have to retype this 100,000 times, we're just going to copy this part right here. Alright, now what we're going to do is we're going to do body colors dot, let me just pull up the list so I know. We're going to do the left arm color 3 is equal to, paste that thing down so we don't have to type that. We're going to do body colors dot left leg color 3, and I don't know how to spell color, is equal to, paste that thing down. Next, we're going to do the right side, so we're going to do body colors dot right arm color 3 is equal to, paste. Body colors dot right leg color 3 is equal to, paste. And finally, body colors dot torso color 3 is equal to, paste. And I just realized something. So in case you guys add in extra extra effects, we're going to name this, we're going to do for this last else, we're just going to put else if instead. Possible tricks, random trick is equal to death, just in case. Because if you add in more, then it will be a bit chaotic. So there you go. All right, speed part. So what we're going to do is we're going to do first, because we have the trick is speed, we're going to do trick is speed is equal to true. Next, we're going to set up a delay so that we don't have, where do we grab the file again? Thank you for reminding me. Let me actually save this so that you can have it. It's in the link that's at the bottom left of the stream. Let me actually upload it for you really quickly so that you can have up to date. And it should be uploaded. Okay. Alrighty. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a delay again. So we're going to do task.delay. We're going to wait 2 minutes so that they have to suffer with a slow speed for 2 minutes. So we're going to do 120. And we're going to create a function. Then we're going to do character dot humanoid dot walk speed is equal to 16. So after 2 minutes, it's going to, I don't see a link though. The link is at the bottom left corner here. Give me 1 second. There you go. All right, so after 2 minutes, it'll set it back. And finally, what we're going to do is death. No problem. So what we're going to do is we're going to do character dot. Give me 1 second, just want to make sure. Yep. Okay. What we're going to do instead actually is we're going to give it just a little delay so that the NPC can say enjoy my trick and then die. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a task dot delay. We're going to wait 2 seconds, create a function, and then what we're going to do is we're going to do character dot humanoid dot health is equal to 0, and now they die. No mercy. And afterwards, what we're going to do is we want to return trick is speed so that we can identify if they have a slower speed. Okay, I'm gonna just wait a few seconds. Alrighty. So now that we have this trick, what we're going to do is down here where we identify, we want to do first, we want to set trick is speed is equal to, we're going to do the give trick function. We're going to set the player and then the negative candy gained or lost. I just realized something. Give me 1 second. Yes, we did forget one more thing. We need to actually assign amount of player candy. So what we're going to do is, after all this, we're going to put it right here. We're going to do player data handler dot edit candy value. We're going to do player amount. Okay. So now that we have identified that the trick is possibly a speed, what we're going to do is down here, we're going to change up a few things. So we're going to do if trick is speed, if it's true, then we're going to do then. We're going to do character dot humanoid dot walk speed is equal to 8. Then, or if it's not true, so else, I'm going to get rid of this. We're going to move this line, so we're going to copy this line. And there you go. So just for testing purposes, we're going to go to the trick percentage chance. And we're going to set it to 100. Right? Let's test this. Okay. So now they're going to experience a trick. And look at that. I am all messed up. I look pretty. Looking good. All right. So now that we have the main game is fully coded. Woot woot. I'm going to see this quickly. Like upload it. Okay. So now what we need to do is, okay, now the game is fully coded. We need to save the data. Because if you notice, we don't even have data. It's just 0, and that's not fun. So what we need to do is, give me 1 second. Here we go. All right. So what we're going to do is below here, we're going to create a variable called data. And we don't want to set it to anything right now. Then what we need to do is we need to call, before we actually do that, I caught myself right there, we need to create the data store service. So we're going to create a variable called local data store service. It's equal to game get service data store service. Now that we have the data store service, we need to create a data store because we have to create it. So we're going to do local data store is equal to data store service. And what we're going to do is we're going to do get data store. And it's up to you on the naming. I'm just going to call it my data store. So it's going to create a new data store. Then down here, we're going to do local. We have to use a p call, which is just going to repeatedly see if it can reach anything, and if it can, then it will return us the data. So we're going to do local success error message. Okay, and then what we're going to do is equal all to a p call of a function, and it's going to do data and we're going to, give me 1 second. Yeah, here we go. We're going to do data is equal to, hold on. Okay, just want to make sure data store get async, and we want the player dot their user ID, because we're going to save the data based on their user ID, because everyone has their own user ID, and yeah. So from there, what we want to do is, if the data is not equal to nil, so if there is some sort of data, what we're going to do is we're going to do player data handler dot edit candy value. We're going to do player. We're going to set that value to data candy. Okay. And from there, we need to create one more event firing, but I'm going to give you guys just a few seconds. I want to check a few things really quickly. Give me 1 second. We're fine. Okay. Alrighty. You guys ready? Let's finish this up. So, what we're going to do is we're going to do game.players.player removed. So if this is when the player is removed, or like we're leaving the game, we're going to connect, function, and we're going to have the player. And there you go. So from there, when the player leaves, we want to save their data. So what we're going to do is we're going to do local data is equal to player data handler dot return player data, which is going to be player. And then from there, we're going to have to set up another P call. So it's going to be local success error message is equal to function, not equal to function, but P call function. And what we're going to do is from there, we're just going to do data store set async player dot user ID and data. So now their data is going to be saved. And to make sure that this is all true, let me go here. I'm just going to enable Studio access to API services. There we go. And I want to just make sure that the trick percentage is not 100% because that is not fun. 25. So let's just test this out. Okay, so the clown gave him candy. So from there, I'm just gonna leave. Then we're gonna rejoin. And as you can see, he has 3. So it's saved. Yay. And now our final part of this tutorial. We just need to work on the UI, which is so quick. So under the starter GUI, we have the client handling. And what we want to do is when the player joins, we want the candy counter to be visible. So let's create a variable called local candy counter is equal to script.parent. And we have to use the wait for child in case it didn't load. So we're going to do wait for child candy counter. And then from there, we're going to do candy counter dot visible is equal to true. And then what we want to do is on the player data handler, when the candy is edited and we have a new value, we're going to fire an event. And as you can see, under replicated storage, where is it? Oh, I don't want to do that. I'm going to undo that quickly. Sorry. We're going to do it under events. So what we're going to do is we're going to do game.replicate storage.events update candy fire client. This is going to fire to the client, so it's going to update something for the client only. We're going to fire it to the player, and we're going to give them their data. Player.name candy. And so under client handling, we're going to create another variable right here, local replicated storage. I can't type. Is equal to game get service replicated storage. And from there, what we're going to do is we're going to do replicated storage dot events dot update candy dot on client event function, and we're going to have the new amount. And then from there, we're going to set the candy counter candy number text. So we're going to do candy counter dot candy number dot text is equal to toString, because you have to convert it to a string in order for it to show up to the event. And so from there, if we test this, and there's an error, and I don't, hold on. No wonder why, because I forgot to connect it. Sorry. There you go. So now, after we connect it, and I load it, please, there you go. You have your new candy amount. And so, if I go up to a house, I ring it, there's the new candy. So if I ring it again, it should work. There you go. So now, you guys have completely coded up your own trick-or-treating game. So let me just upload this really quickly for anyone who wants to use it. Final version. I upload it. There we go. So now it's uploaded. See, now you have the full game of the trick-or-treating game. I'd like to thank all of you so much for staying by and being able to code up this. Let me see. How many lines is this? This thing is. Where is that line of code? You guys just coded 1,450 lines of code. That's something that is big, and you should be pretty proud of. You just got a working game to happen. I'm so glad it worked. Even though we had a few hiccups at the beginning, it works, and everything is good to go. I hope to see in the future you guys creating your own games. For me, I am planning to possibly, I haven't decided 100% yet because I still have to see my schedule, but I'm planning to possibly create another event on how to create your own Thanksgiving dinner game, where the player will have to go around and collect these ingredients to create the Thanksgiving dinner. It hasn't been decided if I'm going to do it, but what I'm most likely going to do in December is like winter mini games game. It's like Mario Party, but mini games with winter. So I'll be creating that. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, let me know, because we are near the end. Thank you all so much for helping, helping and staying along. Like, we got through this, and my voice sounds like it's dying, but we made it. So, yeah. No problem. Alrighty. Let me just check if we have any Q&A questions. Seems we don't. Yeah, we don't have any questions. Alrighty. Nice. Alright, let me stop recording.